Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm diving into an intense and gripping tale of first contact with a new species in The Only Reasonable Answer. Picture this: a seasoned envoy facing a mysterious and potentially dangerous human, all while their station is under siege. What unfolds is a story of diplomacy, survival, and the choices that define us. Let's jump right in. The only reasonable answer. I sat on the floor facing the creature, blood puddling at its feet, none of it its own. Sitting on the body of a fallen enemy, it asked me a question, awaited my response. I felt the lives of all of my world in my hand. It was the soft clicking of foreleg on chitin that woke Envoy Ulxi from his brief respite. His antennae twitched as he awoke, telling him that Deputy Envoy O was outside his dwelling quarters, and the fact that he had been awoken told him it was a matter of some urgency. "What is it, D.O.?" Ulxi called out in question, eyes still closed. There was a brief hope that it might be something minor and he would need be able to handle it quickly without leaving the resting area that hung from the ceiling of his room. "Sir, apologies. I know you just left the command center, but protocol dictates that I informed you immediately. The instructions are quite clear and enthusiastic." U responded nervously. Ulxi only barely held back an angry chitter. "Oh, just tell me what the Void-Forsaken problem is," Ulxi hissed. "Void take recent academy grads who can't follow a simple command." It was an ungenerous thought, but then Ulxi had been heading up the command center for 3 straight rotations. He felt entitled to some grumpiness. U hesitated, almost long enough for it to become a real threat to his health, then responded. "It's a first contact, sir, a species new to our space, and one that we know almost nothing about." All hope of a quick resolution drained from his body. First contact. Serious protocols were in place to prevent potential disaster, protocol that sometimes took days to begin and process. But as an envoy to the collective, there was almost nothing that mattered more than overseeing an effective first contact. With a groan of annoyance, Ulxi levered himself on his bottom legs, dropping from the pod to the floor below. He walked silently from the room, beckoning for O to follow him. O hurriedly fell in with him, remaining a few feet behind and to the left, as custom dictated. "Sir, my apologies again. I know you've been in the CC for days dealing with the old Louis attacks. If you prefer, I could handle this myself and let you get back to sleep. I know you must be needing it." O offered from behind him, his voice a reflection of perfect sincerity. Ulxi only grunted. He had survived the comings and goings of 4 separate deputy envoys, each out to take his job. He knew the dance, the implication of his inability, the offer to do the work himself. It was neatly done. O might bear more watching than he had anticipated. Their legs elicited soft echoes on the soft plastic as they walked the length of the platform. Corridors, spokes of the wheel split off all around them, but Ulxi ignored them all, letting his leg take him down the familiar path to the command center. It had been nearly 8 years since he had been promoted to envoy of the largest and most remote platform, and those 8 years had driven certain points deep into his subconscious: the path to the command center, the path to the feeding area. Never use the common bathroom after 3rd meal on Grolok's Day. Always send deputy envoys to check the environments on new planets first, that sort of thing. But most of all, he could never leave his position. He was on the edge of space, almost literally, the far-reaching hand of the collective. The freedom and the importance were intoxicating, but days like this sometimes made him question that truth. The old Louis had been vigorous in their incursions, getting bolder and bolder, while the steady stream of refugees from small colonies had increased nearly 5-fold, stretching space and food to the extreme. Crisis took its toll. Ulxi continued into the command center and allowed the synthetic material to create a seat for him in the main depression of the room. Information came in almost as he sat. "Sir, the ship is... I've sent a data packet, you should... Envoy, defense protocols should be activated." "Quiet," bellowed Ulxi, punctuating his point with a violent blow to the deck of the ship, the vibrations of which caused everyone in the near vicinity to twitch their antennae in pain. Ulxi gestured to his intelligence officer, the only one who had not given in to yelling. "Since you were patient, why don't you go first? Tell me what we know. Intelligent Officer Cerrone rubbed their antenna, nervously cleaning them. Not much, Envoy. It's from a race that call themselves humans. They come from nearly 2 full deca revolutions away, even with FTL. The only recent news that we've received is that they have entered into a trade agreement with the Bantu. Ulchi paused at this. A trade agreement with the Bantu? That race is half savage. How in the void did they manage that? Ch-ch-ch. I'm not sure, Envoy, perhaps. Shut up. That was rhetorical. Ulchi curled his legs in thought. Any beings that were crazy enough to trade with the Bantu were either desperate or equally insane. Desperate could be good, insane was less promising. Despite his concerns, Ulchi knew his duty. Prepare full defense and dedicate 5 particle cannons to watching their ship. Send me what data we have on them and begin formal communications. They should need some time to prepare responses. Let me know when they have. Any questions? His defense command rubbed his antenna for attention. Ulchi nodded at him to speak. Sir, we only have 5 functioning cannons at the moment. The other 5 are either on scheduled maintenance or were damaged in the last Olui attack. Fine, Ulchi responded wearily. Keep 3 on the humans and let the other 2 watch for the Olui. After that last battle, it will be some time before they can mount another assault anyway. Ulchi turned to return to his room when the sound of a leg on plastic stopped him. Envoy, my deepest apologies, but the humans have responded. His intelligence officer said nervously. Please explain why that merits immediate action. Ulchi knew he was being unfair to his crew and tried to rein in his temper. Sir, they have sent over all relevant data, including biome preferences, relevant diseases that could impact us, dietary information, and typical methods of greeting. They have requested the same from us. They said that they have been observing us for some time, but want to make sure they have everything correct, Cerrone stated in a rush. A sense of foreboding began to creep over Ulchi. If they had been observing them, the implications were serious. Send our response. Ask them how long they need to prepare to meet. Ulchi didn't bother to leave the room this time, and the response was almost immediate. Ulchi looked expectantly at Cerrone, who quickly looked through the data. They said that their information is correct, and that they are ready to meet now. They have also sent over information to program our translators to understand their spoken and unspoken language. Ulchi rippled his scales in discomfort. How did they know what type of translator they used? Forcing down his anxiety, Ulchi signaled his agreement. Very well. Prep meeting room Grabthar. Let them know where to dock. After a moment of hesitation, Ulchi turned to his defense commander. And shift all 5 cannons to cover the humans. Something is off here. A short time later, Ulchi sat in the meeting room, wondering what was coming through the door on the other side. Some basic descriptive information had been included in the data packet, but such descriptions were always inadequate, and most often wildly inaccurate. His nerves jumped as the door retracted and a figure stepped through. His first impression was that the human was short, probably only 2/3 the size of Ulchi himself, who was not an especially large individual. No exoskeleton or hard covering of any kind, though some type of cloth seemed to cover its body. Ulchi ran his eyes over the being. Hair covered its head. The skin on its arms and face was a pale brown, almost drab color, heavy boots on its feet. Then details began to fill Ulchi's senses. The smell of chemical propulsives, faint but persistent. Muscles that twitched and jumped as the creature turned to track Ulchi, a fluidness that suggested something that Ulchi didn't want to think too much about. Then Ulchi found the human's eyes. Only 2 of them focused on him with an intensity that activated some ancient instinct for flight. They were large relative to its face and protected by a heavy brow. It gave the human an aura of malevolence that Ulchi struggled to overcome. The human inclined its head, and for a moment the spell was broken. Ulchi gestured to a small chair that the ship had fashioned, and the human sat. Silence. The human stared, waiting. Ulchi briefly closed his eyes, remembering his duty. Greetings, human. My name is Envoy Ulchi Kafuker. Welcome to platform WAFT 58. I understand you are new to our space. If I may ask, what do you wish to do here? Ulxi paused to ensure that the translation had worked, and the human nodded along, appearing to understand. Greetings, Envoy Ulxi, the human responded, doing an admirable job to correctly pronounce his name in a voice that was soft and almost musical. I thank you for allowing me on your ship, and hope that your tunnels go deep. Ulxi twitched in embarrassment. It was the traditional first-time greeting, one that he himself had forgotten, thrown off by the appearance of the human. My name is Diplomat Dave Majors, and I am honored to meet you. As to your question, we are here in search. Majors finished, spreading his hands and inclining his head. I, too, am honored to meet you, Captain Majors. Though may I ask in search of what? The human, Captain Majors, sat for a moment before a look crossed its face, and it began to reveal its teeth, motion that his translator said was a look of friendliness. It did not look friendly to Ulxi. In search of an answer. Ulxi waited, but Majors said nothing more, and Ulxi began to ask what in Gundam's name he was talking about when he was cut off by a sudden pulsating purple light. Ulxi froze before darting for the door, only for it to slide in place before he could reach it. Majors sat, watching Ulxi in confusion. Status, get me an update now, Ulxi shouted into his comlink. Majors continued to sit. Sir, it's the old Louis. Our sensors must have been damaged in the last attack. We didn't see them coming and couldn't reposition the cannons in time to stop them all. They've breached the platform, came Cerrone's panicked response. C.I. Cerrone, calm down. How many made it through? Ulxi asked, dreading the answer. At least one, maybe two transports, sir. Ulxi slumped. They had personal defense weapons, and their crew would outnumber them at least 6-1. But his kind had made a tactical decision. Weapons and tactics had revolved around ship-to-ship battle for so long that little headway had been made into interior defense. If all 8, or void forbid, 16 of them had made it through, the battle was probably already over. Sir, it seems that at least another 6 carriers are on their way as well. Ulxi nearly went limp at the news. Impending death will do that to a being. Majors made a growling noise that caused Ulxi to turn back to him. Trouble? Majors asked curiously. I have just learned that our defenses have been breached. In short order, every living being on this platform will either be dead or a slave. I suggest you return to your ship and flee before you suffer the same fate. Ulxi managed to get out. Majors looked at him. You plan to stay? I am the leader of these people, I spit in response. I will not abandon them now, not while there is hope that some may live. His voice shook in desperation and fear, but Ulxi would not forsake his honor and ask a stranger to fight his battle for him. Majors gave a sign of agreement before activating his own comm unit. A short discussion that Ulxi didn't understand followed. Majors raised his eyes to find Ulxi's own. My people mentioned that those attacking you attacked us as well. I consider that an activation of hostilities. They will aid in the defense of the platform. Ulxi made to protest, but Majors cut him off. The decision is made. Majors paused and cocked his head to listen as another burst of speech came through. It appears that 6 of the beings that made it through the defenses are making their way directly towards us. They seem to want you dead, Envoy, and where to find you. I suggest you... Majors was thrown backwards as an explosion ripped through the air behind him. An old Louis loomed in the hole where the wall had been. A full cubie taller than Ulxi, with thick blubber coating its body, and 8 manipulators that feed up into a mouth that dominated its small head. Ulxi threw himself at the monster and pinned its arms to the wall before it had a chance to come through. Ulxi stabbed desperately with his lower legs, punching through the dense skin and fat that protected it. The creature roared in pain and spun, throwing Ulxi across the room and into the wall. Ulxi slumped to the ground in shock, grateful to have at least bloodied his enemy. Ulxi galled in defiance as old Louis stood over him, a deep growl sending vibrations through the floor. A shout got both of their attentions, and then, as if by magic, a pole appeared in the head of the old Louis. Major stood there, bright red blood trickling from a cut on its face, arm extended, the chair and the other remaining 5 legs in one hand, the final leg halfway through the skull of the old Louis over Ulxi. Majors moved, jumping forward so fast that Ulxi almost couldn't follow. He heard more than saw the impact of the fist on the chair leg, heard the blood splatter as the leg was driven clean through the Olui's skull, heard as the creature crashed into the ground next to him. Ulchi croaked a word of warning as the 6 remaining Olui began pouring through the hole in the wall. Majors whirled, snapping off another chair leg and repeating his trick. The chair leg snapped out of hand, driving deep into the body of the lead Olui, who was knocked out of the way by its fellows following close behind. Major snapped off the other chair legs, and in a move that shocked Ulxi, charged forward to meet the Olui rush. Ulxi tried to call out for him to stop, but Majors again moved as if time had lost its grip on him and burst through the attack. Ulxi watched in horror as the small human threw its body into the Olui, and then emerged from the other side of said body. The Olui seemed confused by the sudden hole that had appeared in it, and swayed for a moment before falling to the ground. A part of the packet that Ulxi had read suddenly floated to mind. Something about dense physiology, extreme muscular development. The other Olui reacted much the same as Ulxi, looking in shock at the gore-covered creature in front of them. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Majors leapt up higher than Ulxi would have thought possible, and drove one of the chair legs through the eye of the nearest Olui, riding it to the ground. The other Olui finally reacted, reaching with their sharp, knife-like manipulators. The first to reach Majors fell back almost immediately, 2 of its 4 upper arms suddenly missing hands. As Ulxi watched, cuts began to appear on the Olui's body. Majors twitched, and another one of the Olui's arms was severed. As much from fear as from anything else, the poor creature collapsed into the wall, still breathing but out of the fight. Majors stood before them, holding the hands of their comrade, dead and dying at his feet, ready. The 2 remaining Olui made a quick decision and attacked as one. Majors faced them and then drew in breath, chest expanding more than Ulxi would have thought possible. Sound. Pure sound emanated from the human, loud enough that Ulxi's ears began to rupture one by one. Loud enough that the vibrations alone shook Ulxi. Loud enough that the Olui began clawing at their heads, desperate for relief. They collapsed to the ground, and Majors, without letting up, moved forward, sending a chair leg through the backs of the 2 fallen attackers and through the floor below them. Only then did he stop. Majors turned to face Ulxi and sat on one of the bodies that littered the room. His chest heaved from the exertion, but quickly returned to normal. The capacity for that type of exertion and recovery. What in Gundam's name are these things? Ulchi thought as he stared. Now, envoy, Major said, his voice soft and inviting again. I have come for an answer. We humans know ourselves, and in our history we have known only 2 methods of interaction with others: war and trade. The small creature, covered head to toe in the blood of its enemies, looked at me intently. These assholes have chosen war. What will you choose? Thanks for watching. We've seen how the fragile peace between species can be shattered, and the desperate measures taken in times of crisis. The encounter between Envoy Ulxi and Diplomat Majors raises questions about our own interactions and choices. Will we choose war or trade, conflict or cooperation? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unknown.